YouTube and welcome back to JanWHOary, the only month where I have to keep looking over my shoulder to make sure that Mr. TARDIS isn't onto me for stealing the whole merge a month and a Doctor Who thing together into a word. I don't think he'll notice. As far as I'm aware, from that tier list that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, he doesn't watch my videos. I think we're going to be fine. Just don't tell his legal... Does he have a legal team? Don't tell them. So, this is the last one of this run of Doctor Who themed videos, and you might remember, you probably won't, depends on whether you've seen any of my videos before. About a year and a half ago, I made Doctor Who Story Corner, in which I told you about a short story from the 2006 Doctor Who annual, What I Did on My Holidays by Sally Sparrow, which was later, it was by Steven Moffat, which he later adapted into the episode Blink. And I read the story, and that was the video. Well, after that 2006 annual, Panini, who made that one, stopped doing... It sounds like a sandwich. Panini stopped making the Doctor Who annual, and BBC Books took over and kind of aimed them at a younger demographic. And because that was quite a nice thing to have had, that sort of story-based annual, I think Clayton Hickman apparently was in charge of these. They started doing these Doctor Who storybooks to kind of fill in that void. It was a very similar format to the 2006 annual. No articles, just stories, and they called it the Doctor Who Storybook. And there were 4 of these released, and then they stopped. I think possibly The Brilliant Book replaced it. I never got that. And I also didn't get the last of these, the 2010 edition. But the Doctor Who Storybook as a thing only really exists during the Tennant run. And it's great, there's some really good stories in them. But a story that I think is particularly worthy of note appears in the first of the Doctor Who storybooks, the 2007 edition, another Steven Moffat story, which is called, if I can look it up, it's called Corner of the Eye. And someone asked him about this a few years ago, because as you will see as I get into it, it's not as similar to an episode as Sally Sparrow and Blink is clearly the same episode with monsters added. This one is more subtle, but the concept of the monster is reused in another Steven Moffat story several years later. And I'll read you the story, and then we'll have a bit of discussion at the end, and I'll see if you think that if you think the same, that it's a similar story. So this is Corner of the Eye by Steven Moffat. And again, I know for new viewers that why am I doing that music? That's just how these videos are done. So yeah, the Corner of the Eye. I'll try and show you the illustrations as we go along. There's another thing about this book. The illustrations are absolutely lovely. That's the man shaving and a computer. Quite a dated looking computer, but this book's from like 15 years ago. Also, just to let you know, this is presented as like a transcript of a messenger platform. So I'll try and I'll say each character's name. There's two people having a conversation. So I'll be saying their name and then what they said, and then the name and then what they said. And at the start, there's a little sort of like in-app disclaimer. So it wouldn't be called an app back then, but a little sort of in-app disclaimer at the start, like what you get in like, I don't know, online message rooms. I've never been in one. Warning, never give out your password or credit card number in an instant message conversation. To help prevent infection of a computer virus or worm, never accept or open any file or link in an instant message until you verify its authenticity with the sender. Kathy says, "Hiya handsome, how's it going? Haven't seen you on here for ages. I was starting to worry." Tom says, "Oh Kathy my dear, you've forgotten again, haven't you? Sometimes I can't bear it, I really can't." Kathy says, that's going to get annoying quickly, isn't it? Kathy says, she didn't say that annoying bit, that was me. Kathy says, Tom dear, what are you talking about? Have I done something wrong again? Ooh, Mr. Strict. Tom says, you don't remember a thing, do you? None of it. Forgotten it all, haven't you? Every time the same. Kathy says, forgotten what? Tom, I honestly don't know what you're on about. Are you having a laugh? Tom says, the last time we spoke on here, the last 30, 40, God knows how many times, remember what I explained to you? Please try. Kathy says, I don't remember you explaining anything. Tom, we haven't talked for ages. Come on, silly sausage. Are you having a joke with me? Kathy says, Tom, are you there? Kathy says, Tom, please, are you there? Kathy says, Tom, don't ignore me. I know you're there. Tom says, Okay, let's do it all again, but this time really try and remember what I'm telling you, okay? Think you can do that? Kathy says, "You're scaring me, Tom." Tom says, "Do you think you can do that?" Kathy says, "Fine, whatever you want, just stop scaring me." Tom says, "I need you to concentrate." Kathy says, "I'll concentrate, yes sir, mad you are." Tom says, "I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to think very carefully about the answer, okay?" Kathy says, "Okay." Tom says, "You're going to be a little bit scared when you think about this question. I need you to stay calm and stay with me, okay?" Kathy says, "Ooh, Mr. Mysterious." Tom says, "Where are you?" Kathy says, "Where am I? Is that it?" Tom says, "Yes, where are you? Describe to me the room you're sitting in." Kathy says, "The room has 3 yellow walls and 1 blue wall. The room is 12 feet by 8 feet. The room has 1 door. The room has no windows. The room has 4 lights." "There are 4 lights." "The room has 2 switches. The room has 7 chairs." Tom says, "Read back what you've written. That's not a description, it's a list of facts. I want you to describe the room. What it looks, what it feels like, what you can see, smell, touch. Can you do that?" Tom says, "Kathy, are you there? Can you do that? Describe the room, don't be afraid." Kathy says, "Oh my God." Tom says, "Stay with me, stay calm." Kathy says, "Oh my God, Tom, I can't see anything, not even blackness, nothing. I can't feel, I can't touch. Tom, where am I? I don't understand. It's like I'm not anywhere. I can't see, I can't feel, I can't touch. I don't even know how I'm typing this. Please, Tom, where am I?" Tom says, "Calm, remember, calm as you can be. Focus on my words. I'm going to tell you a story. It's not the first time I've told it to you. Won't be the last, I shouldn't think. It's going to scare you at times. It always scares you, but I'm here and I'm not going anywhere, I promise." Kathy says, "Where am I, Tom? What's happened to me? Where am I?" Tom says, "Hush, calm. Going to be calm, Kathy." Kathy says, "Please, I don't understand where I am. Don't go, don't log off." Tom says, "I'm not going anywhere. Now hush and think back. Do you remember back when we were together all that time ago? Do you remember the bathroom mirror?" Kathy says, "Never mind your stupid mirror. What happened to me?" Tom says, "Please, just do as I ask. Do you remember the mirror? It's important." Kathy says, "The big thing with that horrid gold frame in that creepy bathroom at the top of the house. I hated that bathroom." Tom says, "That's it. The big mirror with the gold frame and the crack. Remember the crack? You always wanted me to get it fixed, and I said I was used to the crack and I'd shave all wrong. Okay, that mirror, that big gold mirror with the crack across the corner, that's where it all begins. Me shaving in the mirror. I want you to imagine me shaving. Picture it. It'll help you to keep hold of it if you picture things." Kathy says, "Hold of what?" Tom says, "Picture me standing there, just shaving as normal. It's a beautiful day outside, sunlight streaming in, birds twittering, God in his heaven, me in my pyjamas. I was probably whistling, and then, it's such a small thing, it makes me want to laugh. I dropped my shaving brush. You wouldn't think your whole world would change because you drop a shaving brush, but thinking back, that was the very last moment of my ordinary life. Clunk on the floor, and a second later, everything was different, because as I bent down to pick up the brush, I saw something in the mirror. No, not something. Let's be exact. I saw a man. A small, neat, perfectly bald man standing directly behind me and now revealed in the mirror as I bent. I mean, right slap behind me, Kathy. His face must have been inches from my shoulder blades. I should have been able to feel his breath on my neck." Kathy says, "My God, Tom, who was he? How did he get in?" Tom says, "Coming to that, we locked eyes for just a tiny second. He looked startled, frightened, and I imagine I did too. And there we were in that endless seconds staring. When I say he was small, I don't just mean short, I mean kind of miniature, like a compacted person, 2/3 size, neat, pale, and somehow, the word I want to use is gleaming. Like, he was so clean, he sparkled. The kind of person, does this make sense? You look at and know they've got weirdly small hands. I'm always slightly disconcerted by people with very small hands, and he was really there, Kathy. I didn't imagine it. It wasn't an illusion. For one totally real moment, he was actually physically there." This next bit is hard to describe, but hard even to remember, because he just sort of, I don't know, stepped away, just slipped out of sight behind me again. But it was so fast and fluid, he seemed to just fold out of existence. And I stood there, shaving foam dripping from my chin, the skin crawling on the back of my neck, and my breath roaring in my ears. You know, when that kind of thing happens, for a moment you try and convince yourself you imagined it. Trick of the light, I was telling myself, a waking dream, and then I realised something that turned my stomach over. My breath was roaring in my ears like I told you, but I suddenly realised I'd been holding my breath since I saw the man in the mirror. I hadn't dared breathe since that first moment, so who was breathing now so close to my ear? I spun fast as I could. No one. I spun the other way. No one. But each time a flicker in the corner of my eye, like a movement so fast it could never be seen. I turned again. Each time, nothing. Each time, the flicker. It was odd, that flicker, because it didn't seem like something new. Remember our honeymoon, the fourth night in that hotel, when you said the sound of the waterfall was keeping you awake? Kathy says, you said the waterfall had always been there. Tom says, and you said, yes, but I've noticed it now. It was like that with the flicker, like it had always been there, but now I'd started noticing it. Just the tiniest flicker of someone always stepping out of the way a fraction of a second before I could turn to look. You ever feel that? I think we all felt that, but for me it was suddenly horribly true. The breathing was returned to normal, softening till I could hardly hear it, like whatever it was that stood just outside my vision was calming itself, returning to normal. I was frozen again, so afraid, Kathy, I can't describe it. Finally, I spoke, but all I could think of to say was, I saw you. Such a long silence, and then a soft, girlish, almost falsetto voice, and so horribly close the words were moist on my neck. It won't happen again. Kathy, it was like the whole world was reeling around me. Felt like the floor was heaving at my feet, like a sea, about to suck me under, and all I could think was these exact words. I am cursed, I thought. I've seen what lives in the corner of my eye. Kathy says, oh my God, Tom, tell me it was a dream. Tell me you woke up. Tom says, I haven't told you the worst yet. I recognised the face. Took me a moment, but standing there, I realised I'd seen that face before. Many, many times. Kathy says, where? Tom, where? Tom, are you still there? Please, I'm all alone here. I'm lost in the dark. Please talk to me. Tom says, yes, still here. All these words takes it out of me, and remembering all this, sometimes it makes me... Never mind. You remember the big box of photographs in the hall cupboard? Kathy says, I filed and indexed the lot. Of course I remember. Tom says, of course you do. I sat in the middle of the hall floor and went through every photograph. So many of them from so long ago, when this big drafty house was full of friends and family and you. There were moments I almost cried. Kathy says, but did you find him? Was the little bald man in any of the photographs? Tom says, yes, I found him. I thought I'd been afraid up until that point, but that fear was nothing compared to what I felt now. Yes, Kathy, the little bald man was in the photographs. He was in all of them. That is to say, every photograph I had ever taken or had ever been taken of me, if you looked long enough and hard enough, you could find him. Sometimes peering out from behind someone with a sly little smile, sometimes reflected in a window, sometimes just a slither of his bald head peeking over someone's shoulder. Every time, somewhere in the photograph, there he was, smiling slyly from every chapter of my life. A numbing certainty grew inside me. The creature standing inches behind me, even as I sorted through the photographs, had been hovering at my shoulder and dancing from my sight all my life. And here's a picture of the photographs with the little man in them. I don't know how well that'll show on camera. You can see him just hidden away in the photographs. There's also a picture of spooky stairs in a spooky house on the previous page. Just in case you'd like to see those. Kathy says, Tom, this is impossible. You must see that. This is a dream or some story you've made up. None of this can be true. It's just some horrible fantasy. Tom says, and where are you now, Kathy? Is that just some horrible fantasy too? You've got to trust me or you're never going to understand what happened to you. Kathy says, but it's just so impossible. Tom says, I haven't even mentioned the Doctor yet. That's right, had you forgotten this is a Doctor Who story? Kathy says, the Doctor? Tom says, hush, all in good time. The funny thing was, the more I looked at the photos, the less afraid I became. Maybe because it was proof that I hadn't imagined the little man. Perhaps I was, in the end, more afraid of being mad than haunted. I took the best of the photographs down to the kitchen. On the stairs, I listened for scurrying behind me, but I could hear nothing, and sat at the kitchen table and stared at the little man's face, just as he, I sensed, stood and stared at the back of my head. And now you're going to have to really concentrate, because what happened next is so completely ridiculous that everything up until now will seem quite normal and sane. And Right, so here's the thing, there's a typo here. It actually says, will seem quite sane and normal. I suppose it's meant to be like a virtual conversation, so that's probably why you would have typos and a thing like that. I'm also distracted by this really nice picture of David Tennant there. It's quite a nice picture of David Tennant. These are some of the illustrations from later on in the story. Kathy says, that doesn't seem possible. Tom says, as I sat at the table, I began to wonder if anyone else had ever had a problem like this, if I was the only one who'd ever seen the little bald man. Perhaps he was a common phantom, and as I thought that, the doorbell rang. Now, you know how I've always lived my life these last years. I've cut myself off from everyone, even you, my dear. So as I stood to go to the door, I knew it could only be the paper boy looking for payment, my only human contact in the week. As I crossed the hall, the thought of newspapers gave me an idea. I had a photograph of the little bald man, who flickered at my shoulder even as I walked. Why not simply place an ad in the paper? His photograph and... have you seen this man? This was the thought in my head as I pulled open the door. A man I'd never seen stood there. Hello, saw your ad. I'm the doctor. I'm here to help. Should I do David Tennant's voice for this? It's not a very good impression, probably not. I stared. He was holding a copy of the newspaper, showing me the very ad I'd just composed in my head. The very same photograph I'd just selected. The words, have you seen this man? My phone number. He was looking at me, frowning. This is your ad, right? I believe I gaped at him. Yes, it's mine. It's definitely mine. What's the problem then? I haven't placed it yet. Ah. He glanced at his watch. Well, if you wouldn't mind placing it a bit sharpish, that'd be good. Otherwise, this is going to be a big, nasty time paradox, and most of the galaxy is going to unravel again. And I didn't half get in trouble the last time. People get so cross. He shifted his gaze slightly, looking at the point just over my shoulder. Right, Baldy, make yourself scarce and pack your bags. It's moving day. There's a scurry of feet behind me, and I turned to see a tiny figure darting out of sight into the living room. When I turned again, the doctor had pushed his way into the house and was walking towards the kitchen. Tell you what, I'll place the ad. Better not leave it to you, what with the end of the universe and all that gubbins. He was in the kitchen now. He pulled up a chair, banged his feet on the table. Right then, you've got questions. Don't blame me. I'd have questions. In fact, I do have questions. For a start, what about this house? What about it? Well, it's rubbish, isn't it? Look at it. Filthy, dusty. You've hardly had a visitor here for, 10 years, I'd say. That about right? See where I sniffed there? It said he took a big sniff, so I thought, let's just do a big sniff. That about right? Yes, I said, about 10. Why? It was such a blunt question, I was suddenly at a loss. I prefer not to. What, one day about 10 years ago you decided you wanted to be on your own, all day, every day. It sounded ridiculous the way he said it, but I could only answer, yes. Get out much? As little as I can. I have agoraphobia. Fear of open spaces. Okay, wild guess, you suddenly developed a fear of open spaces 10 years ago. My voice seemed very faint in my own ears. Yes. Don't you see? Doesn't make sense, does it? You're being manipulated, low-level psychic manipulation, and as a result you spent 10 years alone in a big house with a floof. A floof! Oh, I forgot it was called that. It's a great word in my accent. What, I asked, is a floof? It's small and it's bald, and I'm coming to that. 10 years, barely any human contact, and it's never even struck you as odd. My wife, I said. I speak to my wife every day. He looked surprised for a moment. Your wife. Of course, wedding ring, should have noticed. Okay then, let's meet the wife. Wheel on the missus. Wheel on the missus. I took him to the computer. You speak to your wife on instant messenger. Every day. Well, that's a poor excuse for a relationship, and I'm not usually one to talk. Why don't you live together? I looked at him. I had no answer. You're married, he persisted. Why don't you live together? I just stood there and I kept looking at him. Well, he said. There was a roaring in my ears. I felt as if the whole world around me was shifting into a new shape, and I could see it clearly for the first time in so many years, and I didn't understand anything I saw. Kathy, why don't we live together? Kathy says, I don't know. I can't remember. Tom says, we're married. Why do we only talk on the computer? Kathy says, I don't know. I can't remember. Tom says, we were married. We were happy. Why did we split up? Kathy says, I don't know. I can't remember. Tom says, neither can I. Oh, Kathy, neither can I. The doctor held his hands on my shoulders, steadying me as my world spun. It's the floof. It can control and limit your thoughts so long as it stays close. What? I begged. Please, for God's sake, tell me, what is a floof? Odd little creatures, said the doctor, settling back into his chair. No one really knows where they came from because they're pretty much impossible to study. But where there are humans or humanoids, there are floofs, millions of them usually, but no one ever knows a thing about them because there's an ability that evolution can throw up that no one could ever learn anything about. The super evolved ability to hide. To hide? And this is a point at which you might start to see the connection to another later Moffat story, but we'll talk about that after the story. A floof can stand in a bare room full of 100 people, all looking in every direction, all searching for it, and find the one spot no one's looking at. You can be alone in a room with a floof and spinning around trying to see it, and the floof will just spin faster. However, I'm just imagining... So you see, every so often you pass by and you see him spinning. But no, I think it means you're spinning, and he's going like that. However fast you turn to look, a floof has always moved away faster. Just a tiny movement in the corner of your eye. People get used to it, think it's normal. They hear a creak and they say it's the house settling. What does that even mean, house settling? No such thing as house settling. They get a prickling on the back of their necks. They think the hairs are standing on ends. What's that about? Hair doesn't stand. It's a floof breathing right behind you. But what do they want, these floofs? Nothing much. Mischievous more than anything. They'll nick your pens, your socks, move around your car keys. They love all that. You write a phone number on a scrap of paper, they'll whip it away as soon as you turn around. His face turned darker. But sometimes they get a bit possessive, as in your case. Your floof has cut you off from the rest of the world. It wants you all to itself. The rest of the world except my wife, I corrected him. He frowned and looked at the computer. You only talk on instant messenger, he said. No letters, no phone calls. I never write letters and I hate the phone. Anything else at all? Emails? I don't have an internet connection. He stared at me. Say that again? I don't have an internet connection. I've never had an internet connection. He was rising from his chair, his eyes burning at me. Say it again, and this time listen to what you're saying. I don't have the word died in my mouth. Kathy, my love, how can I be talking to you on instant messenger if I don't have an internet connection? Kathy says, where am I? Tom, please tell me now. I'm getting the tone not great in my reading, but you get the idea. Tom, where am I? I don't seem to be anywhere. I'm just words. How can I be words? Where am I? Tom says, the doctor spent the rest of the day looking for you, but the evening he emerged from the cellar looking grim. Kathy says, why would he be looking for me in the cellar? What would I be doing in the cellar? Tom says, he found you buried under the wine racks. He says you'd been dead for at least 10 years. The floof killed you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Kathy says, but I'm not dead. I'm here. How can I be dead if I'm still here? Also, here's a picture of the doctor digging up the cellar. I love the art in this. It's great. Tom says, you're not here. You're not even really Kathy. The doctor explained it to me once he'd examined the computer. The floof knew he could control me only to a limited degree. He might make me forget why we'd parted, but he couldn't remove my desire to talk to you. But they're smart floofs. What he did was he created another you. He programmed the computer with everything he knew about you, which was a lot. He was the perfect spy and created a program to respond exactly the way you would. You're not Kathy. You've never been Kathy. You're a subroutine that thinks it's Kathy. Kathy says, that's not true. I'm me. I'm Kathy. I can feel it. Tom says, okay then. Describe the room you're in. Kathy says, the room has 3 yellow walls and 1 blue wall. The room is 12 feet by 8 feet. The room has 1 door. The room has no windows. The room has 4 lights. The room has 7 chairs. The room has 2 light switches. Tom says, you see? Exactly what you said before. The real Kathy never saw the room the computer sits in now. It was a cupboard back then, so with nothing else to go on, you're pulling information about the room from somewhere else on the computer. That's why it's just a list of facts. That's all computers know. It's all you know. Kathy says, I'm me. I know I'm me. If I wasn't me, why would you even bother to talk to me? Tom says, let me finish my story. Kathy says, why bother finishing it? You don't even think I'm real. You think I'm a computer. Tom says, just let me finish the story. Kathy says, if you must. Tom says, once the doctor had found your body, he changed. Before he had seemed so light, so jolly. Now he was thunder, and he spoke like thunder too. Floof! How can you say floof in an angry voice? Floof, he roared. Floof, come here and stand in my sight. Nothing stirred in the house. Listen to me, Floof. You can hide from him, but nothing can hide from me. Listen to my voice. I'm angry now. I'm not good at sounding angry. I don't know how. I'm a bad actor. But, oh, I can get angrier, so come here and stand in my sight. And suddenly he was there, like he just folded himself out of a corner. The floof in full view, the tiny bald man who had killed my love. And here's a picture of them all together with the floof. It's just a little guy. It's just a little guy. The doctor looked down at him. Here's the thing. Here's the deal. You took a life, so I'm taking yours. The floof said nothing for a moment, then softly, we are very difficult to kill. I hate that voice. Didn't say I'd kill you. I said I'd take your life. And your life, and he turned and pointed to me, is him. The floof looked at me, lost, alarmed. I could almost have felt sorry for him. You can't. No, please. He's mine. Not anymore, said the doctor. He's leaving. In my TARDIS where you can't follow, and you can do what you like. You can mope around this house and pine for 100 years for all I care. Suits me. Every town needs a haunted house, and I can't see anyone else moving into this dump. You'll be alone. That's your punishment. But you listen to me. I'll be watching. I'm always watching. And if you harm another living soul, I'll be back. He glanced at me. Right, let's go. Don't pack. I'll lend you a toothbrush. He was already halfway to the door. I can't, I said. He turned. He had a face made for surprise. I looked at the computer. I can't leave Kathy. He stared and stared. The floof looked at me in hope and wonder. That's not Kathy. He seemed close to exploding. I explained. That's a computer program that thinks it's Kathy. For the last 10 years, that program has been my wife. I will not leave it here alone. Well, we'll switch off the computer. We will not switch off the computer. Fine, we'll leave it running. She'll be alone. She's not a she, she's a subroutine. That's no subroutine. That's my wife. He stared at me for a long, wondering moment, and then he gave me the biggest sigh ever. Humans, he said. Honestly, you humans, I should have just got a pet. Kathy says, oh, my love, you stayed. You did. You stayed. You stayed for me. Tom says, no, of course not, my love. The doctor was right, and he convinced me in the end. I couldn't stay, not just for a computer program. I would have stayed for the real Kathy, but, my love, you're not the real Kathy. Harsh. Kathy says, if I'm not the real Kathy, why are you here? Why are you talking to me? Tom says, oh, haven't you guessed? This is what the doctor did for you, for me, for both of us. Kathy says, what are you talking about? My question stands. If I'm not the real Kathy, why are you still here? Tom says, because I'm not the real Tom. Kathy says, I don't understand. You're scaring me again. Who are you then? Tom says, ask me where I am. Kathy says, where are you? Tom says, the room has 3 yellow walls and 1 blue wall. The room is 12 feet by 8 feet. The room has 1 door. The room has no windows. The room has 4 lights. The room has 7 chairs. The room has 2 light switches. Bum, 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 bum. And the last picture is just a little sad floof just next to the computer, which implies it's him that's the new Tom. But is it? I get the impression that Tom is also a computer. But yeah, that was the story. So I'd like to just take a moment before we finish off to talk about the links that this story has to a few other Steven Moffat stories, because most noticeably, the creature that has evolved to hide perfectly, perfect hiding as an evolutionary feature, is kind of the underlying premise behind Listen. That's where the Doctor starts off with this idea of the monster that has evolved itself to never be seen, and it's just, you think it's in the corner of your eye. That's very much the same idea, and obviously both Moffat scripts. Someone asked Steven Moffat about this at the time, and he'd forgotten, or he claimed at least to have forgotten about this story, which might be true. It might just be an idea he had. Then he wrote it down and kind of slipped his mind because it was for a storybook, that it wasn't for the TV series. And he's just like, oh yeah, that was an idea I had. Maybe I'll make a story about that. It explores it in very different ways. In this one, there's categorically, there is a thing like that. Whereas in Listen, is there not? We never really know. Which is better? It's hard to say. I quite like both, to be honest. The other thing that I noticed, and I only really noticed this today as I was reading the story on camera, and I thought, okay, put that at the back of your head and bring this up at the end. There's a little Moffat script thing that I've noticed he does in a few of his stories, where there's a noise in the background. It's subtle. You don't really think about it, then someone points it out and suddenly, oh my goodness, big twist, why did we not notice this sooner? For example, in The Empty Child, they're listening to the tape of Jamie speaking, and then they're having a conversation as this tape plays in the background, and while they're talking, there's a sound, and like, hey, what is that? And they're like, it's the tape, it's the end of the tape ran out 30 seconds ago. We're not listening to a recording, we're listening to actually him, a dun dun dun. Then later in the same episode, they've got tap, tap, tappy, 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 typewriter. Can you stop tapping your typewriter? I'm not tapping my typewriter, it's the child is controlling the typewriter. Dun dun dun. And it's that thing. They do it again in the Girl in the Fireplace. It's a major plot point. The clocks are all broken. That's why the tick, tick, tick. You don't notice it because you think it's a clock, but the clock's broken. There are 2 moments like this in this story. The first one's kind of more a reference to that bit. It's not done for big dramatic punches towards the start, where he hears his breath rushing in his ears and realises he's holding his breath, so it's the floof's breath he's hearing. So that's the first one. And then later on, the internet connection. I don't have an internet connection. Well, how are you talking on Messenger to your wife? And that's kind of done more as the big twist of the episode. So that kind of makes it feel it's a very Moffat-y story. I don't remember, I assume that he wrote stories for other later on. They tend to be the best ones. They're a little bit different always. Like Sally Sparrow's one was a homework journal, just sort of talking about it, and usually the doctor kind of detached to things, and there's always a timey-wimey thing going on. Like in the Sally Sparrow one, there's the tape recordings from the past where the doctor's talking to her and having a conversation, which is then recycled as the DVD Easter eggs in the episode Blink. In this one, the doctor has the newspaper article before it's been printed. So yeah, it's a very Moffat-y script. I don't remember if I assume that the later annuals have Moffat stories in them. I don't actually. The last one, the 2010 annual storybook, I don't have. I might get it sometime. I might look it up, see if I can find it for a reasonable price. Because otherwise, they're a great collection. I'd love to read the stories in that one. But I might do this again sometime. If you'd like me to read you some more stories from the Doctor Who storybook, let me know. If you'd rather I didn't, let me know. I'll try not to. That's it though. That is Doctor Who month. That's JanWHOary is now at an end. I mean, this is going out on the 28th, so the couple of days left of the month. That's us. We're done. And I hope you've enjoyed this month. I have. I think it's been quite fun to do a sort of theme month. It's been nice to get into Doctor Who videos specifically, because like I said at the start, some people see me as a Whotuber. I don't know if I do. I like Doctor Who YouTubers, but I feel like my stuff is a bit all over the place. Some of it's Doctor Who, a lot of it's not. But I hope you've enjoyed this content. I hope you stick around for other things. It's not just Doctor Who, but if you're not interested in non-Doctor Who stuff, still keep an eye out. There'll be more at some point. That's not all my Doctor Who content for the year. There will be more. I just don't know when. But yeah, that's it. That's the end of the video. So I'll be back next week with something that's not Doctor Who. Until then though, thank you for watching and have a nice month. Have a Who day. Thank you. Bye.
Tell me a story, oh ho ho. It's not nearly Christmas, oh ho ho. It's a story, oh ho ho. I don't like this, oh ho ho. That is what Sewage said when he watched this, oh ho ho.
Hey, what's up? It's me. It's new and improved Captain Jack Jarkness from the Darkness. Remember that band? That's me. Doctor, look out! It's a Dalek. It's a very manly John Barrow. I'm John Barrow Man. Emphasis on the man. Dalek. I hate Americans saying Dalek, but he's Scottish. He's not even an American. Hate it. Rubbish. It's not? Well, that's a revelation to me. Everything he says sounds like he's selling something. It's not. Is your lawn nice and trim? It's not. Well, that's a revelation to me. Get yours in the store. Or don't. I'm not your ma. Maha. No. It's in the throat. It's maha. Maha. No. Maha. Maha. That's fun. I like my new Captain Jack costume. I think it's pretty fun. I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty cool, pretty groovy. Boater hat. Not this time. Not this time. Totally made up. This one was invented by a writer.